All right, what is good, ladies and gentlemen, is the Master Viewer back again with another review, and tonight we are doing a review for A Bug's Life. This is in preparation for a viewer recommendation. It is a first-time watch for me. I never saw this film. This is the second Pixar film ever to come out back in 1998. And yeah, with all that background out of the way, let us just get into it. I do have the names pulled up here because there is a decent amount of characters and they're a bit difficult to remember. And so yeah, let's just begin starting off. Actually, before we begin, I will give a big thanks because we did hit 93 subscribers, so we did hit a new sub record, so big thank you to all of the subscribers, viewers, recommenders, commenters, anyone that is interacting with the channel in any way, shape, or form. I greatly do appreciate it. And yeah, with that said, let us just begin starting off with the plot. So the plot is basically that there's this colony of ants. They are collecting food in order to feed not just themselves, but also grasshoppers. There's these grasshoppers that are kind of forcing them to collect food and give it to them. The grasshoppers are basically they're much stronger and they're much more intimidating. So they threaten the ants into getting food for them, so that they themselves don't have to go through the effort of collecting food. So the film starts with basically there's this one ant, Flick, who he invents this machine that's supposed to make it easier for the ants to collect seeds, which is like the main thing that they eat. And so he accidentally causes all of the food that the ants collected to fall down the hill that they're on, or the food ends up like falling into a puddle, and so it all gets ruined and stuff, and so there is no food for the grasshoppers. So then the grasshoppers arrive, and their leader, Hopper, he ends up basically saying like, okay, he's gonna give them a second chance where basically they'll have to get twice the amount of food, because the way it works is that like the ants, they initially collect the food for the grasshoppers, and then for the rest of the season they collect enough food for themselves to be able to survive. So now the second they're like, okay, we're going to give you a second chance, but you have to collect double the food in the amount of time that you're supposed to spend collecting food for yourselves. So basically it implies that the ants are going to starve, pretty much. That's the situation they're in. And so yeah, Flick is very much like not the outsider, but like very much the ant of the colony that no one like really respects. Everyone kind of makes fun of because no one really likes him because of his inventions and stuff. He's that kind of character where it's like no one really sees the misunderstood genius kind of character. So he ends up saying that he will go off to find some bugs that can help defend the ant colony against the grasshoppers, and so that is what he ends up doing. He goes to a city with a bunch of bugs, and this is where he gets introduced to these circus bugs. We actually get a scene earlier where we see these circus bugs. They put on a performance, but it doesn't go the best, and so yeah, from there Flick ends up meeting these circus bugs when they get into a fight with a bunch of flies at a bar. And so Flick basically recruits there's like a misunderstanding that kind of happens where Flick thinks that these are warriors, but then they're actually circus performers basically. So they end up going along with Flick to the colony, but then Flick realizes that they're not actually fighters and they're just circus performers basically. But he still manages, they end up like going off, they're about to leave, but then there is a bird that ends up attacking them, and so Flick and the circus bugs, they all kind of work together in order to save there's this ant, Dot, she is the sister of Ada, who is the soon-to-be leader of the ants, also like the love interest for Flick. There's also like the queen ant. These are just characters I haven't mentioned up until this point, I guess I'm mentioning now. So anyway, Flick and the circus bugs, they end up saving Dot from being eaten by the bird, and from there the entire ant colony is applauding for them. And so this is the first time the circus performers are really hearing applause, and so they decide, you know what, we'll stick around, we'll stay. And so Flick ends up coming up with a plan of, okay, the grasshoppers are also scared of birds, so we are going to build a fake bird in order to scare off the grasshoppers. And so that is what they end up doing. But then there is a reveal that here the owner of the circus, P.T. Flea, he ends up showing up and then says like, okay, time for you guys to, hey, everyone loved that initially in the first scene that we're introduced to the circus bugs, they do this whole performance with fire and stuff where they end up roasting P.T. Flea, like he ends up catching fire and stuff, but it turns out to be a big success. And so he returns basically saying, okay, we're going to keep doing that one act that we did before, and we're going to get rich off of it. So this is where the ant colony finds out that, my phone battery was low. This is where the ant colony realizes that Flick was lying to them about them being warriors, the circus bugs being warriors, and so yeah, this leads to everyone kind of like telling Flick to leave. Like Flick kind of gets outcasted and stuff, so he's going along with these circus bugs, and then then this leads into the final act of the film where the grasshoppers, they end up showing up. But there's also a scene earlier where it's kind of like basically where we find out that it's not really about them getting the food. It's about, like Hopper says, like it's not about getting the food. It's about them exerting their authority over the ants so that they don't rise up and defeat them because they like outnumber them. So yeah, the grasshoppers end up showing up, but at this point they didn't have enough time to gather food because they were busy with the bird decoy, and so the fake bird plan. So the grasshoppers arrive, and now it's like they go full dictatorship mode where they are just oppressing the ants greatly. So Dot ends up managing to escape. She goes to tell Flick about what's going on, and then Flick ends up... It's kind of weird because like I assumed Flick would know that what was going to happen. Like once he left, he should have realized like, yeah, the grasshoppers are going to show up, and then like the ants are going to be screwed in because like they're going to start being oppressed by the grasshoppers. So the fact that like Flick acts surprised that Hopper is now like oppressing the ants, it's kind of like, did he not expect that to happen? Like wasn't that the whole reason that he was trying to like come up with the bird plan in the first place? So anyway, the circus bugs, they end up trying to cheer up Flick, trying to like convince him that he's not a complete failure and that he is like a good person and he does have like successes and stuff. And anyway, eventually Flick just the scene happens, the circus bugs and Dot, they manage to convince Flick to not give up, and so they end up going back to the ant colony. The circus bugs, they put on a performance in order to distract Hopper and the rest of the grasshoppers, and at this point, you have Flick with the rest of, there's like these, I think they're called blueberries, they're like this group of ants, Boy Scouts, I think they're Girl Scouts actually, so these scouts go with Flick to the bird this is where they enact a plan with the fake bird. So Flick uses the fake bird to try to scare off the grasshoppers, but then eventually PT Flea, he's there, he ends up thinking it's a real bird, so he ends up lighting it on fire, and so this ruins that plan. And so at this point, the Hopper ends up like starting to beat up Flick, and this is where he gives his final motivational speech, basically saying how the ants are not the ones that are meant to serve the grasshoppers. The ants, like the grasshoppers are the ones that need the ants, basically. And so this convinces all of the ants to rise up and fight the grasshoppers, and so that ends up happening. And from there, I think they manage to, all the grasshoppers start running away. Hopper is about to be shot out of a cannon, but at this point it starts raining, and so there's rain, and so all the ants are like scrambling to try to get back to their anthill, and Hopper uses this as an opportunity to shoot himself out of the cannon in order to fight Flick. And I'm trying to remember specifically. At this point, there's like a final fight that goes down, but then an actual bird shows up and ends up, it's actually kind of dark, he ends up eating Hopper. So all these, like this film, also Planes, which I also recently reviewed, there's like a lot more, these are meant to be kids films, but there are like some pretty dark moments in these films. So anyway, so at this point, so Hopper is now dead, I guess, and that's pretty much where the film ends. I mean, the ending scene, basically, where the circus bugs, they're like saying their goodbyes and stuff, they're going off to do some more performances. Everyone now is cool with Flick, and they're all utilizing his inventions and stuff, and so, then everyone says their goodbyes, and that's pretty much where the film ends. So, overall the plot, I would give the plot like I'll go 3 to 5. It's not one of my favorites. It's an alright plot, not like anything too complex, really, just a basic story of, this... I mean, it's not exactly basic, but it's like the Flick, the outcast, going to bring some like, I don't know, it's not something, it's not a story you can really sum up in like one sentence, but the plot was alright. I would say not one of my favorites ever, but it worked. I was engaged throughout the entire way, I would say. In terms of the characters, I did like the characters. I think Flick is a pretty good lead. Hopper is a fantastic villain. I think that he's voiced by Kevin Spacey, so I know that, this guy has a lot of controversy surrounding him, and so, but I still think that his performance was great as Hopper. I think that Hopper was a fantastic villain. I think his brother Molt was pretty entertaining as well. All of these circus bugs, Heimlich, Francis, Manny, Gypsy, Rosie, Slim, I think all of them just were very entertaining. PT Flea as well. Tuck and Roll, the twins. Dim was like the only circus bug that he felt a bit like, he didn't speak as much as the rest, so he felt a bit forgettable, but even so. The Queen Ants, Ada was fine. Dot, all the characters, I would say. I like the characters. I think the voice actors did a really good job with the characters the entire way through. So overall, I'm going to give the characters, I would say, probably I'll go with 7 out of 10. I'll say pretty good characters. Yeah, they definitely, yep, I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. In terms of the settings, it's fine. It's like a lot of barren areas, I would say. Nothing too impressive, really. Yeah, part of it might be because it was 1998, so... But I'll get more into that with the visuals. The settings, they're all right, I would say. I would give the settings like I don't know, it's 6 out of 10, we'll say above average. It's fine. It's like very much just basic. I've seen, there's movies there's like other bug movies I've seen that I think do a better job with like the settings themselves. Like, I think the reason I'm reviewing this movie now is because it's in preparation for a recommendation to compare it to the movie Ants, and I remember that's actually a movie that I have seen before. A while ago I saw it, so it will probably be a pseudo rewatch for me when I do rewatch it. But I do remember, just from what I remember from that film, the actual setting of like where the ants are, it looks a lot more well thought out. And also the movies like, I don't know, the bee movie, also like the area that the bees are there, it feels more kind of like here it's just there's nothing really too interesting about where the ants are. It's like they just live underground kind of, but it's not like well built or anything like that. It feels all very basic in terms of the setting. So yeah, just a 6 out of 10 for the settings. I would say just above average, but not anything too impressive, really. In terms of the visuals, for 1998, it doesn't like age the best, I would say. It does definitely look a bit dated. Even so, it looks like it's still watchable. Like, it doesn't look like terrible to... I don't know. I'm going to give the settings like a 5 out of 10. It's a product of its time. It definitely doesn't live up to modern standards, I would say. There's definitely art styles that look a lot better nowadays, and just the visuals, it definitely feels like something from like the 90s. So yeah, in terms of the visuals, just yeah, it's from 1998, so it's obviously going to look a bit dated, but it still looks fine. I would say just a 5 out of 10 for the visuals. In terms of the comedy, I'm going to give the comedy, honestly, a 7.5. I would say that the comedy was very good. I actually there was a lot of good lines from the characters, a lot of good reactions of the characters as well. Just some good jokes here and there. Yeah, overall, I actually found it pretty funny, I would say, so I'm going to give it a 7.5. Very good comedy, I would say. The scene where I really like this line. PT Flea, he's like telling Slim, the stick bug, to go out to perform. Slim says, like, I'm tired of going out there. Everyone always laughs at me. And then in like a really good reaction, PT Flea, he says, like, because I'm not going to try to mimic it because I'm not going to do it justice, but he says it's because you're a clown. Because you're a clown. So he says it in like a really, really funny way. So yeah, definitely a lot of good line deliveries in this movie, I would say. So in terms of the worst thing, I think the worst thing is probably just... I'm not sure. I think I'll just probably reuse the worst score, which was the visuals, which I gave a 5 out of 10 to, because, yeah, the visuals do definitely look dated. I'm trying to think of maybe anything else. I can't really... Maybe I don't know, the whole aspect with, like, the ant colony itself is not the most interesting. It's a lot more interesting with the grasshoppers and the circus bugs. The actual ant colony is not the most interesting, with just Princess Ada, Dot, the queen. Actually, I'll probably give it to that. The ant colony itself was probably... I didn't really care for them at all too much, so I'm just going to give them I don't know, like a 4.5 for the ant colony, because yeah, they weren't every other aspect of the film, the grasshoppers, the circus bugs, even the bird, I would say it was all just more interesting compared to the ant colony, where they just felt they were mostly just scared or pathetic, or not pathetic, but like, I don't know, the opening scene is like the ant colony, it's like they're walking in a line, but then a leaf shows up, and then it's like they don't know how to react to it and stuff, so I don't know, it just feels they're just not as interesting as some of the other characters, I would say. So, but they're not really meant to be characters. It's just this colony of ants that I just didn't care for them too much, so I'm just going to give them a 4.5, I would say. In terms of the best thing, I'm going to reuse the best score, which was the comedy. I do think that, maybe not even the comedy, maybe just like the voice acting. I think that I'm actually going to give that. I'm going to say the voice acting for this movie, I would say, like, honestly, between an 8 to an 8.5, I would say it was between great and amazing, and I'm going to give it to, I'm going to be a bit harsh, I'm just going to give it an 8 out of 10. I would say 8 out of 10 for the voice acting performances, because, yeah, the line deliveries in this film are really good, I would say, and so we're going to go at an 8 out of 10 for the voice acting, I'm going to say. Any extra notes? There was bloopers at the end. I did forget that Pixar films, they do tend to have at the end of the movie. I remember specifically for the Toy Story movies, I'm pretty sure they would always put bloopers at the end of the movie. And so I wasn't expecting it, but this film did have bloopers at the end. And so, yeah, there were some decent bloopers in this, not like, from what I remember, I think the Toy Story bloopers were a bit funnier, but this one definitely had some good moments in the bloopers, so that was cool to see. And yeah, that is all the extra notes, so I'm going to do the calculations. So King Crimson. Alright, so it ends up coming out to about a 6 out of 10, which would be above average, but I think I'd give it a bit higher than that, honestly. I think I would probably give it like I think between a 6.5 to a 7, but I'm going to be a bit harsh. I'm just going to call it 6.5. I would say it was good. Definitely, I went into it with like pretty low expectations, I would say. Like out of all the Pixar films, this one looks like honestly one of the most boring ones, and it's one of the only ones I think I haven't seen before. So yeah, I wasn't really too looking forward to watching it, but honestly, it was definitely better than I expected, and I would say solid 6.5. I'm going to give it, maybe if I let it marinate, it would get a bit higher, but for now, I'm just going to call it a 6.5. I would say it was good. And yeah, that is pretty much all there is to it. So if you have any recommendations, any shows, movies, video game stories, anime, manga, web series, anything that you want me to review, leave it in the comments and I'll maybe possibly check it out. With that said, that is pretty much all there is to it. So let's leave it at that.